Hello and welcome to the MoBros Show, where I, Tip Mosley, pastor at Fellowship Baptist Church in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, will sit and discuss topics of life, ministry, and theology with my brother, J.P. Mosley, who is a professor and minister at Heidelberg Theological Seminary in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. On today's episode, JP and I will once again talk about work, but we'll talk about procrastination, and we'll talk about the parable of the laborers found in Matthew chapter 20 as we look at the phrase, in the 11th hour. You gave me a little bit of a nugget of possibly how you did things when you were in seminary, of when it came to reading. Figure up how much of the book that you have to read, maybe if all of it. Figure up when you got to get it done. Divide that up amongst your days, and that's how many pages that you have to. I've never done that before. I've really only read when they told us to read, and I've changed my way of doing study, because I think one thing that helped me in the previous jobs that I had was I worked on my own schedule.
Right.
At doing the night shift work. Now I worked it was shift work, so I worked 11 to 7, but I was going to school at that time, and so I had to manage my own schedule as far as school. And then working for pest control, I had my own. Well, no, before that, seeing clients, I saw them basically on their time or when they could be seen, but I still had to set up my own stuff to do it. And then writing up notes and assessments and diagnoses and all that fun stuff. And couldn't put it off. You had to do it and get it done in a timely manner. I work a lot better with deadlines. That's what I tell people when I do graphic design for them. It's free. I'm not going to sit and change a logo 300 times. I'll give you 3 edits, and I need a deadline. I need to know when you need it. He's like, oh, just whenever. I'm like, okay, then you'll get it never. I need to know when you need it. Give me a deadline. And so working as a pastor, I set my own schedule basically to get things done in a timely manner so that I'm ready for a Sunday morning when I need to be ready for that Sunday morning. And then also ready for, you never know what, deaths, sickness, visitations, needy congregants. But I used to be really bad about procrastinating. And I think there was something that you wrote that hit me pretty hard. Do you mind sharing? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All right.
You talking about my doctoral dissertation?
Yes, I am.
Have you read the whole thing?
No, not yet. I'm still working on it. I got other things I'm reading.
Yeah,
let me show you my stack of books.
You showed me. Yeah, it's about a quarter of mine.
What? It's a quarter?
Oh, now you don't want to show people. Yeah.
I only showed you an eighth of what I really read, so don't worry about it. Whoa. Just 1/16.
No. Yeah. Now you've lost me. You're starting to do fractions or whatever. No, it's the idea. I like to phrase it this way. It's better to be ahead than to be behind. And you're absolutely right.
It's the same thing I said when we were in that horse costume.
Yeah, but at the time you were shorter than me. So,
continue.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I had better shoulders. No, it's the idea of, I wrote it for people that had gone to seminary and or were getting ready to go into the ministry, and well, what how do I apply the scriptures to this congregation? How do I best communicate the gospel to this congregation?
Mm-hmm.
And part of my answer was, you're really not going to be able to apply to a congregation until you know the congregation. And so that's some of the burden of the work that I did. And so then I say, in the meantime, while you're studying your congregation, you need to be then preparing down the road what you're going to be preaching as you're getting to know them. And so what I suggested in the book is essentially, a person's first year at a new church, maybe it's their first church, they ought to preach the sermons, assuming that they went to a decent seminary that had them do this. They ought to preach the sermons that they wrote while they were in seminary.
Right.
And I said, and the reason for that is it's been what we could call peer reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Your professors listened to that and gave you constructive criticism on what you did well and what you need to work on the next time you go to deliver that message.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, and then even if they did internships, redo those sermons because those have been peer reviewed with elders. They'll tell you, hey, you really did well here, but you missed it right here. And so the concept is, do those ones. Don't be afraid to redo sermons. Your first year, and when it comes to applying it, you're not. It's going to be applied very generically, very broadly. As you're getting to know the people through sermons, preaching, through family visitation, and even through Bible studies, Sunday school classes. I would argue to write sermons for those Bible studies and write sermons for those Sunday school classes, and present them as Bible studies and present them as that. That way, what you're doing is now you're getting the congregation to review your stuff, because hopefully your Bible studies and Sunday school classes are up and open with questions and discussions and various things like that. That way you're hearing from them how this passage applies to them very directly. And so then, as you're doing those Bible studies, you need to also be preparing your next year's worth of sermons, because those Bible study sermons are not for a few years down the road. But as you're preaching what you've preached before, you need to be preparing next year's sermons while you're writing also the 2 years down the road.
Yeah.
And so as I did that, I was up to 6 months to a year, give or take, some time ahead in sermon writing. The other aspect of that, so there's two areas of why I do this. Is number one, I think in order to properly apply a biblical passage, you have to have lived in that passage for a while. And it helps by having a regular steady Bible reading plan, that you're in the Bible every day. I mean, that helps, that you're praying through the scriptures, that you're with your family, you're reading the Bible together as a family, as spouses. It helps that you do that, because then you're in the Bible a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But then you don't want to be walking into, let's say, you've had a busy. Some pastors take Monday off. I didn't in my second church because I found I was a little too depressed to come Monday. So let's say you've got a busy Monday, you get a busy Tuesday, busy Wednesday, Bible study Wednesday night, and it's Thursday. You got to get that bulletin out for the musicians to see. Okay, here's the music. Here's the theme of the service, and various things like that. At least that was in my congregation. So Thursday and Friday, a lot of the times, or maybe even Saturday, depending on what day you take off, end up being sermon writing. Well, what if you had a funeral?
Right.
Or what if, and this truthfully never happened to me. Even when I was writing sermons that I had to preach that following Sunday, what if you had writer's block? What if you were like, I don't know what this passage means, right? I've heard it happen to some guys. I never experienced that. By God's grace, I never experienced that. And so, well, wait a minute. What am I supposed to do here? Right? I've got nothing, and it's Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I used a phrase the other day with one of my sons. We're in the process of moving my home gym, which is in our 6th bedroom in the house, out to the garage. So I'm going to have a garage gym type of thing, which I've had before, so that my oldest son can have his own bedroom and my second son can have his own bedroom. That way they can spread out a little bit more. They're both just about 6 feet tall, and they need to have some room.
Yeah.
Right. Well, he said, well, Dad, why can't we do that this weekend? I said, well, son, I've been waiting to see you and Stephen take the initiative, and y'all have waited to the 11th hour to get this done. And he kind of, Joseph has been reading the Bible on my Bible reading plan since he was 11. So he's 16. He's going on 17.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew exactly what I meant when I said you waited to the 11th hour. Stephen kind of did a double take. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I meant you waited to the last second. It's school started a day for them.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have his own room yet.
Yeah.
And we can now. The past 2 days he didn't have to go to his job, his work. And he's got the garage looking pretty good. So this weekend we're probably going to be able to move the gym, which is, I've got dumbbells ranging from 1 pound all the way up to 55 pounds. I've got pull-up bars. I've got bands, medicine balls, and there's mats and stuff. And so we're going to have to we're moving all that stuff out probably this Saturday, this weekend.
Yeah.
But his room can't get moved yet because we have to get a few other things to get the room ready. But the point is, he thought he was going to be able to get it done this weekend, and he waited to the last second.
Yeah.
And that's what I think happens with preaching sometimes. And this is why I wrote the book, is I didn't want people waiting, at least my students, people that would read this. I didn't want people waiting to the 11th hour to get a sermon together. Now, let's say the person doesn't really preach from a manuscript, and they preach from an outline. Mm-hmm. And they've got the outline in their head all week long. Well, and then they get up Sunday morning, and that's when they put the outline on paper. I still don't think they've waited to the 11th hour. I think they've been working on it all week. A guy that did that was Charles Spurgeon. Now, what Charles Spurgeon did that was wrong was he waited till that time to figure out what he was preaching on. And he would literally flip through the Bible and put his finger down and say, okay, I'm going to preach it on Isaiah 53 verse 7. That's not good. Oh, my go-to was the congregation knew where I was going to be next week.
Yeah.
I mean, they knew that Sunday what passage I was going to go and be in the next Sunday. And I could have given them where we're going to be the next 4 Sundays. In fact, I did that when I was in Pierre, South Dakota, because this is when I started doing some of this, because I had a musician that wanted to know 2 months out what music we were playing.
Yeah.
Because he had a condition with his hands. He had what was called tremors. And he wanted to practice. He wanted to make sure he could play it. And if he couldn't play it, he'd let me know, and we'd make a change. The only time his hands wouldn't have tremors was when he was playing the piano. It was actually quite amazing.
We went to some place where you were one time, and there was a guy that played the guitar. And he played it classically. It wasn't a classical guitar, but he played it classically, like he was classically trained. they had communion that day when we went, and I want to say that we were meeting that you guys met in like it wasn't like a sanctuary, it was like just a room.
So was it when I was in seminary?
Possibly.
Yeah. I was part of a PCA church plant at the time.
Okay.
And we had a guy, it was the only musician in the group. He wasn't a member of the church. But yeah, he would play the guitar for us.
Could kill that guitar. Like I've
Yeah,
never seen somebody play
he's very good.
a hymn on guitar the way that he played it.
Yeah, he was very good. And
man, it was I was mesmerized by the way he was playing that guitar. It was incredible.
I think when it comes to classic hymns, you need a picker.
Yes.
Not a strummer.
Yeah.
And for that matter, it has to be amplified. It's not going to be able to broadcast over the whole congregation because it's just not going to be loud enough. That's
the majority of them. Yeah. The majority of them are written for like a harp instrument, like a piano
or an organ.
Yeah. Yeah. And so even if you were looked at if you look at a chord sheet, it's still very much written for the way a piano, because it'd be so much easier to play it on piano. And you're like, I got to change all those chords on this guitar. Good grief. That's a lot of chord changes. And some of them are really funky, but on a piano, it makes perfect sense because on some of them, all you got to do is just move one finger. And then on a guitar, you got to completely change your voicing of how you do one chord to a different way of doing it, to an inverted way, just to get to the next chord easily and quickly.
Well, it's easy when you can read music and you know music theory to be able to make those changes, pencil those changes in, to know it's actually, I can play it this way too.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Some of the music is actually meant for orchestra, which again, that's the organ was the cheap person's orchestra.
Yeah.
But some of it's meant for
sounds.
orchestra.
Yeah.
Some of it's meant for that. And occasionally here at the congregation, Fran and I attend now, or we're members. Occasionally we'll have somebody accompanying, like let's say it's a piano player. Sometimes there will be a brass section, French horn, trumpet, trombone.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes there'll be a person like about a month ago, Simeon got really excited. There was a double bassoon.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. She plays the double bassoon for the university that she attends. And she was playing with her mom. Her mom was playing the piano. Other times there was somebody played the flute, clarinet. I mean, I have yet to see somebody come in with like a violin but in my congregation, I served in Colorado Springs. We had a couple of people that played violin. We had one guy that played a bass or cello. We had several brass section, and then some woodwinds as well. And it was wonderful when they decided, let's like around the holidays, we're gonna do this. And so they would practice and stuff. And then we had a decent choir that would and Fran got involved in the choir. The boys got involved with the like Stephen, for example, he's a percussionist. And so he would get involved with the group, with the orchestra, I guess. It's not a full orchestra, but and then we would join with other churches, and they would perform, and it was wonderful. I had wanted, there was a larger PCA that some of our people would go and play for when they were doing Handel's Messiah.
Oh, yeah.
And I had wanted to go hear that because that's church music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I've been doing music for quite a while, leading worship and stuff, and I've always been able to know if someone's coming in and they don't have their stuff ready. working with bands, and they'll try to play it off like they know what they're doing. And if they come in, they don't have their stuff ready. It throws a lot of people off. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time I've gotten to where, and I'm helping younger worship leaders with this too, that you always have something in your back pocket. Mm-hmm. Always be ready for because now we rely on projectors and the computer being able to put the music on the lyrics on the screen. Always be ready for when that computer doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Know your congregation, like you said with preaching. Know your congregation, know your church. Like we had an example here at this church. It was on Easter. They had a prospective youth pastor, or not youth pastor, but worship leader come in to lead worship on Easter. And the former pastor had it set up almost like sight unseen, had never heard the person lead worship, didn't know how it was going to go, but decided on Easter is when they're going to have their first Sunday. Like, boy. And the computer didn't work. So he decided that before each line, he was just going to say the line and then sing it, expecting the congregation to know based off of the line that he spoke, and then sing, and then sing with him. It did not work. It did not go well. In situations like that, I teach the younger worship leaders, always have 3 hymns that you don't even have to look at, that the words, the music, and you can just do them. Know the hymns that are in the congregation and know what number it falls on in the hymnal.
Yeah.
And that way, if something like that happened, you know what? Let's stop. Everybody get your hymnals out. Turn to hymn number 42, and let's knock out Blessed Assurance.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's actually hymn number 42. That would be kind of crazy in our hymnal. Yeah.
Well, but that's very good. I remember one of my professors. There's some people that see technology and utilizing technology in worship as moving in a very progressive and liberal direction. I don't. I actually use a computer to preach from. It's a Surface Pro. That's what I use. It's, put it kind of like in tablet mode and whatever. And I have a little mouse up there that helps me. And it doesn't ever look like I'm actually looking, except for my Bible. Mm. But I have that because I make changes on the fly to things. And, I have a full manuscript with me. Well, when it comes to that, some churches, not too many in my denomination, actually, I think we maybe only have one that I've heard of, are moving to stuff being up on the wall, up on the screen. The congregation here has built their sanctuary, and it's designed to where they're able to do that eventually, have things up on the wall with a projector screen and stuff. I'm all in favor of that. I think it's not. I'm in favor for the sake of visitors, not for the sake of convenience and easy, but for the sake of those that have come in that don't know what we're doing. Or maybe don't even know how to read a bulletin, because a bulletin is for announcements.
Yeah.
It's not directions. It's announcements. And so it's up there on the screen. It's pretty easy. One of my professors, because that question of, well, what do you do when the screen doesn't work? How is everybody supposed to know how to sing, this tune and stuff like that? Most people don't really know how to read music, but what if they don't know how, they don't know the tune of the song? And my professor kind of jokingly said, because I got an idea. What if we took and we collected all of the songs that we could potentially sing in this congregation, and then we bound it in like a document form, like a book form, and then set it in the pew for everybody. And then we just told them where in that book to turn to so that we all could sing. So I think your counsel is extremely wise.
Wow.
I think it's,
you know,
no, I think it is.
man.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead. Because what you're doing is it's not that you have a backup plan, because it's a safeguard. Singing is to be a part of the corporate worship of God's people. You're going to be, there's you were showing me one of the books you're reading. In that, you're going to have to learn about what is an essential element of worship and what is a circumstantial element of worship. Circumstance is you're outside, you're indoors, you got AC, you don't have AC.
Yeah.
It's
been to both of those.
You have a pulpit, you have a lector, right?
Yeah.
It all depends on where you are, but essential is the fact that the word of God is supposed to be read and preached, that there's supposed to be prayer, giving of alms or an offering.
Yeah.
There is a debate as to whether singing is one of the essentials. Because our chief response to God's word is prayer. And what is singing? Corporate prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Corporate thanksgiving.
Yeah. With a melody.
Praise, with a melody.
Yeah.
Right. And so there is a debate. There is an argument about whether singing. I would say it's essential, like baptism and the Lord's Supper is essential. But if you don't have it, it doesn't mean you didn't have worship. So I would argue it's essential. But if you're in the persecuted church and you're having to preach out of whisper, but you can't have everybody sing because it'll get loud, then I think you're still having worship. But anyway, no, I think that's a good practice to say, let's. In fact, I would probably go so far as to say I would have not just 3 hymns prepared. I'd have like a dozen, because what if those computers aren't ready to go by next Sunday? Right, exactly. You don't want to do the same 3 again. So my go-tos were, of course, it's got two different titles. But It Is Well With My Soul, Amazing Grace, Isaac Watts' Wonderful Cross, I think is what it's called. A Mighty Fortress is Our God.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got many more.
I normally
crown
say
him with many crowns.
I normally say have what you need ready in your back pocket for if on a Sunday it doesn't work. Yeah. So you can always have between that Sunday and the next Sunday to have other things prepared.
Sure. Yeah.
If we had one situation where it was extremely cold outside and the heat wasn't working in a portion of the building. It wasn't working in the sanctuary, and it was so cold that our noses were hurting, and our toe, we couldn't feel our toes. That's how cold it was.
Put shoes on.
And so with shoes on. We had shoes on, but it was the heat was fine and going full strong in the fellowship hall. And so I said, let's grab as many hymnals as we can. Let's do these 3 hymns, and we're going to do it. We're going to have service in the fellowship hall. It didn't really matter if we had music.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have mattered. We could have stripped everything down and just dove right into God's word, and it would have been. And everybody probably would have been like, wow, that was amazing. That was because it was, something different. It was a step away from the like, I don't want to say it, but sometimes, and there's a book that I read where sometimes coming in and moving through the motions becomes an idolatry.
Oh yeah. 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 It's, you're now worshiping the tradition.
Yeah.
The way I put it, and I like to phrase it this way, is let's make sure Sally's not governing the church. And Sally means the same as last year.
Oh, okay.
Same as last year. And so, why do we do this? That's what we did last year. It didn't answer my question as to why we're doing this. Yeah. But for them, it did, because it's the way we've always done it.
Uh-huh.
And the story that comes to mind to kind of describe what Sally is the mom and the daughter are cooking the Christmas ham or whatever. And the mom cuts the ham in half and puts it in the oven to bake. And the daughter says, "Mom, why you cut the ham in half? I mean, couldn't you just put the whole thing in?" "Well, it's the way my mom taught me how to do it. It's the way my mom always do it." And so the daughter says, "All right, well, give me a second." So she calls up, Grandma. "Grandma, I'm cooking Christmas ham with Mom." "Oh, that's great, honey. Why do we cut the ham in half?" "Oh, I didn't have an oven big enough."
Yeah.
Got nothing to do with that
How
it was
it's cooked.
important to do it. That's right.
Right.
That's right. And so, if you do enough digging and you'll find out, well, that tradition or that practice that we have it's actually only because it was cold outside and we needed to stay warm. For example, the minister's wearing a big coat, a robe. It was cold outside.
Yeah.
And ministers climbed up into pulpits where everybody else was able to huddle around a coal heater or wood burning stove. The minister was not.
Yeah.
Though there may have been one down there at the bottom of the pulpit. A pulpit, again, was a staircase leading up to a circular area. But we don't have those anymore. There may actually be a church or two in Nashville.
Yep. I've seen one.
Designed that way. There was some in Chicago.
There's a very large Methodist church downtown that I used to spray bugs for them that they had.
And so when you hear the phrase in old worship textbooks of mounting the pulpit,
yeah,
that's what that is.
It's climbing it, basically. Yeah.
Climbing into the pulpit. The book Moby Dick. One of the early chapters in that book is about a preacher, and the way he mounted the pulpit was a ladder, a rope ladder, like he was on a boat.
Huh.
He climbs, and it's interesting. But
you need to get into our.
I was going to say,
discussion.
I think we need to talk about Matthew 20.
Yes, you had already made a good segue into it, and we just went on a few other.
I've been working on my transitions. I did
speaking of tooth decay,
that's mine. Speaking of tooth decay, you don't want to wait to the last second to start brushing your teeth.
Oh, wow. There we go.
If you wait till the 11th hour to brush your teeth, you're going to have some teeth missing.
Ugh.
Brush your teeth twice daily, floss once, use mouthwash.
So Matthew 20, thank you for the dental hygiene lesson. Matthew 20, there's a parable at the beginning of it.
Jesus says a parable.
Yeah.
And it's a kingdom of heaven parable.
I love those.
May I read it?
I don't mind.
The key for the kingdom of heaven, just starting at verse 1, for the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. Now, when he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right I will give you." So they went. Again, he went out about the 6th hour and the 9th hour and did likewise. And about the 11th hour, there's our phrase.
Yep.
He went out and found others standing idle and said to them, "Why have you been standing here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one hired us." And he said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right you will receive," meaning their wages.
Yeah.
So when evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to his steward, "Call the laborers and give them their wages, beginning with the last to the first." And when those who came who were hired about the 11th hour, they each received a denarius. But when the first came, they supposed that they would receive more, and they likewise received each a denarius. And when they had received it, they complained against the landowner, saying, "These last men have worked only 1 hour, and you made them equal to us, who have borne the burden in the heat of the day." But he answered one of them and said, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. I wish to give to this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Or is your eye evil because I am good?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last. For many are called, but few are chosen.
Huh.
It's a wonderful parable. And I'm actually getting ready to teach. Actually, that's the parable I'm going to be writing a sermon on here pretty soon.
Oh,
But yeah. But this coming semester at the seminary, I'm getting ready to teach through the Gospels, and Matthew's going to be the gospel that I focus heavily on. And then, with Mark and Luke's differing stuff, I'll deal with their stuff, and then I'll teach heavily on John.
yeah.
Um,
Which makes sense, being synoptic gospels and all. They go well together.
They do. But what's interesting about parables is many parables really have just one point, one meaning, and Jesus will tell you the meaning.
Right.
You gotta be listening, and here he tells you the meaning. Is it
sometimes
not lawful?
Sometimes it's
lawful
after
for me to do what I do with my own things.
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes even the disciples will be like, "What in the world did you mean by that?"
That's right.
And then he'll explain
the parable of the soil.
Mm-hmm.
So many people have come in and they've actually given an unbiblical. In other words, Jesus disagrees with their interpretation later in the gospel. They're like, you just need to keep on reading.
Right.
But
so go ahead. Sorry. Here,
Jesus tells us the point. It's verse 15 and 16. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things, or is your eye evil because I am good? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. For many are called, and few are chosen. In other words, Jesus is saying, Israel's mine, and so are the Gentiles. Any questions?
So when he says with my own things, he means his children.
Lost sheep. Yeah. And this parable is about the people that came into the covenant with Abraham and the people that have come into the covenant with him.
Mm-hmm.
See? It's the same covenant. It's the covenant of grace.
So those that were working during the day, toiling in the heat, as they were saying, were the ones that came in the Abrahamic covenant?
Yeah, through Abraham, Moses, yes. In other words, he's criticizing the Jews of his day.
Okay. And so then the ones in the 11th hour are the ones that come in through the covenant of Jesus Christ.
Through the new covenant.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Now, that's my understanding of this parable. Right? Now, I think what we need to do is understand that parable in light of the audience Jesus is talking to,
mm-hmm.
Which includes the apostles.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I think we also then need to turn around and understand this parable in light of our congregation. And for instance, Luke has the parable of the lost son. And you have the older brother that stays, the younger brother, messes around and squanders his inheritance. Congregation is a lot of the times thinking they're that second son. Well, let's be careful that we're not the first son too. Because the first son, when somebody does repent and comes back and is put in full membership like everybody else, I didn't go and do this. I didn't go and do that. Why is he being treated like me? Now you're the older son. And that's the case here. So let's think about, I have served the Lord for 40 years. I don't think you were serving the Lord. If that's your attitude, the person gets upset. The person is disgruntled. They've been teaching a Sunday school class for 30 years. And it's time to move on. Or I've even heard it this way. Well, that's how I was treated. Now it's time for you to get yours.
Oh.
And that's horrible. That's horrible. Instead, we need to recognize that we are in what is called the covenant of grace, and our ministry is to be a gracious ministry. Our power and authority is ministerial and declarative, and our ministry must be one of grace. And so, you get You get a person who's coming in off the street and they turn to Christ, and with some more explanation of what all that means, and now they're in the church. We need to celebrate. Now, that doesn't mean that person automatically becomes a Sunday school teacher or deacon or an elder in the church, and they don't all of a sudden run off to seminary to become a minister. No. But they are a full member just like everybody else now. No matter what their background has been. And here, what a day is representing is a lifetime, is a generation. It's the idea that for the people that were there from the beginning, we were circumcised when we were supposed to.
Uh-huh.
We've been in since youth. We've been in our whole life. This guy's not. And it's a dangerous concept. I've heard other churches that have decided to allow their youth to go sow their wild oats for a while before they come in into a full communicant membership in the church. That's not good. That's not good either. How about we do this? Do you believe in Jesus? Yeah. All right. Do you understand what all that means? I mean, actually take it seriously and not sit back and say, well, what if they sin after this? Then we'll deal with that. But just because that's happened doesn't mean all of a sudden they're out.
Is it a concept of go out there and sin and then come back and
someone, or we got to be careful. They're going to sin, but it's a high view of the Lord's Supper. It's a high view of sin. I mean, it's not that they're mistaken of something. That what they're mistaken is actually, I think, God's grace outruns our sin every day, and let's be mindful of that, no matter how old we are.
Or the idea of being reborn,
right?
Of that transformation that occurs. That there's no longer. Was it Paul? It's no longer I who lives, but Christ in me. It's no longer the flesh, although the flesh remains. There needs to be a change of thought, a change of what you seek after, a change of what you long for, you desire for. Seek after His kingdom, His righteousness. That what happened to that?
Right.
When you receive Christ, what happened to that idea?
Well,
it's completely blown out of the window.
Well, and we have to be careful too that whenever we're hearing of other people's points of views, we've got to obviously take it with a grain of salt, but also got to think about.
No, I'm mad. I ain't gonna let it.
Yeah, well, you have to look at it and go, well, what are they trying to guard?
Oh,
what are they trying to protect?
Or what are they trying to control?
What are they kind of trying to control? And I'm more of the favor of I don't know what they're going to do down the road, but I know what they can do now. And what they can do now is come into the church. That's where I am. I'm not going to sit back and say, oh, they're going to sin greatly. I don't know if they are or not. But what I do know is the offer is given to them now. Mm-hmm. And the idea of waiting to the 11th hour, I'd rather not wait for my deathbed.
Right.
I'd rather have a lifetime of getting to know Jesus.
Yeah.
Than a lifetime of struggling in the world without Jesus.
Yeah. I've seen where people get mad over the idea of just like what's happening here in the scripture of the idea of a deathbed conversion.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what?
Yeah.
They get mad over it.
Yeah. This particular parable gets to the heart of what makes a person, let's say, pharisaical.
Ooh, yeah.
Look at everything I've been doing.
Right.
And this guy comes in. This guy, I mean, he skipped in line. He jumped ahead of me in line.
Yeah. So this is completely different than the idea of procrastination. Like we use the 11th hour as a way of, it happened at the last second, or you did it at the last second, or you put it off until the last second.
What this is saying is the Gentiles have gotten in at the last. all that stuff.
But
and we need to be thankful.
It's up to God. I mean,
That's right.
Yeah. Well, who are you to say what I do with my own?
That's right. 15 and 16. That's right.
Man, that's great.
I think the gospel is a wonderful thing.
So, of course it is. So we're going to, let's pause right there. Yep. And next week we're going to go the extra mile.
All right.
You think we can do that?
Maybe. We'll give it a good. I like the
Thank you for tuning in, and we appreciate your support. If you would like to give in financial support to J.P. Mosley's work at Heidelberg Theological Seminary in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, you may do so at heidelbergseminary.org/support-HTS. That is heidelbergseminary.org/support-HTS. And if you'd like to give in financial support to Tip Mosley's work at Fellowship Baptist Church in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, you may do so at thefellowshipbc.org/give. That is thefellowshipbc.org/give. Thank you, and may God bless.